Coming up next on Tech News Today, we try to untwist the tangled mess that is Peter Thiel's involvement in taking down Gawker. Also, Google scores a huge win over Oracle in court. Apple's Echo competitor could simply be an updated Apple TV. Facebook and Microsoft are laying some serious cable in the Atlantic Ocean. And Pokemon Go, a phenomenon I have no business talking about, but I'm going to because you asked us to. All that and more coming up next on Tech News Today.
This is Twit. Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by CashFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today, episode 1522, recorded Thursday, May 26th, 2016.
This episode of Tech News Today is brought to you by ZipRecruiter. Are you hiring? With ZipRecruiter.com, you can post to more than 100 job sites, including social networks, all with a single click. Screen, rate, and hire the right candidates fast. Try ZipRecruiter with a free 4-day trial now at ZipRecruiter.com/TNT. Hello, this is Tech News Today, the show where we make giving you the daily technology news a routine that you should add to your routine.
I thought you were going to say we make it look easy.
We make it, actually, we make it look a lot.
Or not,
we make it look a lot harder than it really is.
Possibly so.
I am Megan Morrone.
And I'm Jason Howell. We are welcoming back to the show one of my favorite guests, Lauren Hockenson. It's great to have you back today, Lauren. How are you doing?
Hi, Jason. I didn't know I was one of your favorites, and now I'm doing extra good.
I know. You're up there on the list. I got to say, you're awesome. It's always great getting you on. You bring an excellent perspective to the show, so thanks for joining us once again.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really excited to talk about the news of today, of which there is a lot.
Yeah, especially this top story, which is not an easy one to tackle, but we'll certainly try. Let's get started here. Sometimes it's tough to tell the difference between a tech story and a media story, but the situation with Gawker's loss to Hulk Hogan regarding its publishing of an unreleased sex tape is blurring those lines, continues to blur those lines. That case resulted in a guilty verdict for Gawker, awarding Terry Jean Bollea, as he is never known, he's more known as Hulk Hogan, $140 million. A sum that would likely put Gawker out of business altogether, unless, of course, they can find a buyer. But things get even more complicated when we hear now that Peter Thiel, he's the co-founder of PayPal, early investor in Facebook, and by all accounts, a billionaire in the tech sphere, spent $10 million of his own dollars to fund Hulk Hogan's case against Gawker. And he's now admitting as much. There was news that, the rumors that it had happened, and then he kind of came out and admitted to it, saying his funding in the case was, quote, one of my greater philanthropic things that I've done. Basically, there's so
nothing
many
like protecting rich people from embarrassment and the philanthropy.
I know, right? I mean, there's so many different angles and layers to this. Like, I feel like in setting up the story, I feel like I could have talked for just 10 minutes, for 10 minutes just on that, because there's so much detail here. Basically, it all dates back more or less, as far as everyone can tell, to 2007, when Thiel was outed by Gawker's Valleywag, which is known for outing things as being gay. He says this, plus many other articles like it, targeted at friends that he has, and just a whole lot of other people that didn't deserve this type of coverage on, Valleywag and Gawker sites, was a good reason for why he's doing this. So I don't know. I don't know where we begin on this, but I'm going to start with you, Lauren. What do you think?
Yes, so I'm going to try to offer as nuanced of a perspective as I can, because obviously there are a lot of viewpoints and there are a lot of feelings that people have about Gawker. There are a lot of feelings people have about Peter Thiel, not to mention the whole Facebook thing.
Yeah.
It sort of turns into a big brain pretzel, and you have to sit there and
Really
sort of unknot your brain as you try to figure out exactly where your perspective is. So I'm going to offer this. I think that it's important to note that this isn't the only court case that Thiel is actually backing. He's backing I believe 3 other court cases using other plaintiffs, and not all of them are stemming from the Hulk story, although they actually still have another separate outstanding trial for the Hulk situation based off of another video. So that's, a whole said of it. But basically, not only is Thiel funding it, but also it seems that he has some sort of relationship with the council that is some sort of professional relationship with the council that's being provided on these trials. So it's very clear that Thiel is invested. And kind of the shocking thing to me was how quick many of the Valley's noted venture capitalists were really quick to sort of stand with Thiel and stand against Gawker, basically saying that Gawker somehow deserved what it had done because it was, quote, unethical. I've seen that journalists need to be taught, quote, a lesson, end quote. And these are from, prominent VCs like Vinod Khosla and Chris Sacca, who have been particularly vocal, especially in the last couple days. And I think that's, to me, very shocking. Whether or not you agree about what Gawker does or what Gawker has done in the past, the idea that a specific class of people are able to use the judicial system as a way to essentially bleed a publication dry is the kind of thing that makes the media quake in their boots a little bit. Because, obviously there are systems in place to make sure that the media doesn't do anything illegal. There are libel laws in place, there's defamation in place, and there are penalties attached to those things. But the idea that it's not just about getting the due, it's about the fact that Thiel is specifically trying to tie Gawker up in lawsuits to bleed them dry is kind of a hard pill for me personally to swallow.
Exactly. It's interesting that you bring up Chris Sacca and saying that they, one of the people that was saying they deserve to be taught a lesson. And it just is, this is a good example of there's so much said on Twitter all the time, because I also think that Chris Sacca said one of the most interesting things in one of his many, many tweets. He said, maybe your outrage should be put towards the judicial system that favors the rich and costs so much money to have these trials, which I think is an interesting point in all of this. Backing trials is a known thing. The ACLU, and just people who don't have the money to defend themselves. There are wealthy people that back their trials all the time, and it's a shame that it has to work that way. What do you think, Lauren? If he had come out in the beginning, if Thiel had come out in the beginning, and everyone knew he was the one supporting it, would we feel the same way now that he was backing it from the beginning and not hiding it?
That's actually a really good question. And it's something that is particularly interesting because, of course, Sacca basically said, boiled down, don't hate the player, hate the game. Right. Which is a totally, I think that is a flawed argument to begin with because, the whole point about societal systems, whether that's the judicial system or the government or, even cultural norms is that, we as people, as a collective consciousness have the power to change it and also the power to make judgment calls on it and decide what is and isn't ethical because, that's how we work as humans is that we decide to define these categories and say, yes, for example, if Thiel was open about his trials and the fact that he is openly pursuing Gawker, I think that people would still have judged harshly for it because it does seem, incredibly tactical. And it seems very deliberate. And if that is something that he wants to associate with alongside, his many investments in his many companies, that's, personally his prerogative. But I think the fact that he chose to put it in the shadows and to hide it from the community made it really seem kind of extra Bond villain type. It seemed to me to be one of those old Korean revenge plots in a lot of ways, like an Old Boy or something, where he just this thing happened to him, years ago, and he was like, just wait, I will get you.
10 years from now,
10 years,
there will be the
and then all of a
perfect
sudden,
case.
Full circle, and it comes all the way back around, and you realize, yeah, he's been really, really into taking Gawker down, and I think that people would have probably felt unsettled either way, but this just feels like that extra layer of hinky that I just...
Yeah, kind of weird ickiness. I mean, tactical, I think, is the perfect way to put it. I think you nailed it there. I think at the core of this, and there are some people in the chat room that are still kind of a little lost on the foundation and why, sides are aligning the way they are in this particular case. Thiel has been pretty outspoken, a proponent for free speech in the past. He's donated to the committee to protect journalists. So for somebody in his position with that, with that kind of perspective over the years, to literally put his eggs into the basket of taking down a journalistic, site, let's say, organization based on things that it's saying that he does not like seems a little bit contradictory, and I think that's what hangs some people up. On the other and you know, further, I mean, he's like a long time from the early days member of the Facebook board. Facebook has had its fair share of issues in the past couple of months dealing with trying to make sure that people understand that it doesn't side with anything in the kind of media space, and that it's an open, fairly run organization in that regard. So if his personal money has bankrolled this, but he holds that strong position with Facebook on their board, I mean, does that end up making it a bigger issue? Is this something that Facebook should be worried about at all? What do you think, Lauren?
Well, to the extent that I don't think that Facebook has taken too kindly to its investors and its board members speaking out in a way that is contradictory towards the Facebook core tenets as they were. I mean, we saw this happen with Mark Andreessen when he made those comments about India, even though that was incredibly off the cuff and on Twitter and not even, you know, any level that where Thiel is currently. I think that Facebook has put a stake in the ground to sort of say that its investors don't control it, and that Facebook is going to uphold the values that it's going to uphold. And, you know, obviously given the light of its neutrality as in terms of reporting news and the trending news tab, which I also refer to as like the least important part of my page every time I look at it. But Facebook and Zuckerberg have both clearly stated that they have, you know, they have views and they're willing to express their views as a company, and those views may differ from their investors' views. Whether or not people will be willing to embrace that as face value, if Facebook does come out and say something, has yet to be seen. I mean, again, Facebook is a corporation, and you know, in a lot of ways, you can say that Facebook doesn't have a dog in the fight, but you can also say that they do. I think that it's really complicated, but I think that that's a decision that Mark Zuckerberg will have to make, and make it fast and stand to it. And I think that that's one of the hardest things that a CEO has to do in running a company.
Yeah, I mean, they made no comment. Like, many people made no comment on this. I kind of wish I could make no comment.
Well, you can now.
On this, yeah. But, yeah, it is super complicated because, I mean, the other thing about Thiel is that he's a Trump delegate. He's a libertarian. And so I think that Zuckerberg is also a little gun-shy at this point about taking sides in any of in politics, just from what you were talking about, by the, you know, the trending topics being such a big issue right now. So I think he doesn't want to offend anyone. I also think the other thing I don't see a lot of people talking about is that, I mean, many people in Thiel's group knew that he was gay. It wasn't necessarily something that, I mean, I think a lot of people get written up in Gawker about something that they're really ashamed about. And then to sue them for whatever reason, for, you know, because they think that they shouldn't, this isn't news, you know, and then they don't, because then it becomes bigger news. And so for something like, maybe he just that was the take that he's saying, is like, this wasn't something, I'm a good person to pay for these lawsuits, to stand up against Gawker, who I believe they're kind of a bully as an organization. So I think, I don't know.
And he has the means to.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? A lot of people, I think, that might get targeted by a publication like Gawker might not have the means to go after them in this way. He did, so he helped out. So,
but I mean, I don't know. Lauren, I think you have a different perspective, having been like a journalist in San Francisco for a long time. So what do you think about that?
So back in college, when I was studying as a little journalist with Training Wheels, I was asked to take a course called Journalism, Law, and Ethics. Law and ethics are separate for a reason. And the reason is that ethics are something that we as a collective consciousness, as human beings on Earth, have deemed to be wrong, shady, underhanded, not right. And law is law. It is the way that we function and the way that we govern ourselves as a society. And the issue I have personally with this situation, looking at it, is that Thiel's argument isn't that Gawker has broken the law. I mean, specifically in his case, I mean, basically everybody sort of decided that what happened to him wasn't libel because it was open, but it's an issue of ethics. And that's what concerns me in particular, because when a third party decides whether or not something is ethical, that is one thing. But when a third party decides whether or not something that is unethical deserves to be punished in a way that is adjacent to or using a creative use of the law, then we end up with a huge problem, especially when it comes to the protection of the Fourth Estate. I'm not here to defend Gawker. Sometimes they write stories that I look at and I'm like, oh, Lord, what was going on here? Like, why is this here? Why did we do this? You know, we're all sitting there and you know what, journalism media is all hanging out on Twitter and everybody says it all the time. They're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that this story came out. And, you know, we pick apart ourselves well enough. And we talk about the ethics of journalism well enough. And we try to decide what is good and what is bad based on our own, you know, our own lines, and those are different. But we have different channels for them, and we have a way of doing it. I'm not defending Gawker, but the issue that I have is what happens when it's not Gawker? What happens if it's a New York Times? What happens if it's a local newspaper? What happens if it's a media nonprofit like ProPublica? What happens when it's, you know, all of these other different bodies that are involved in media? What happens if somehow a billionaire VC decides, or a billionaire businessman decides that, you know, that company has personally offended me and shamed me in a way that I will tie them up in lawsuits until they die? That, to me, is the most scary part of this, and I think that that's something that the journalism community is still trying to wrap its head around, because it does put the Fourth Estate in a precarious position, and it does, in fact, ironically run countercurrent to the First Amendment. And so it's going to be interesting to see how this unfolds, because personally, I think that it means that a lot of people should really be brushing up on law and ethics.
Yeah, thank you so much for your perspective on this, Lauren. Let's go to another law story.
I know, right?
So many.
The verdict in the case of Oracle versus Google is in. Google has won. It's a victory for fair use and innovation in software development. The 11,500 lines of code that Oracle claims Google copied for Android are considered fair use according to a unanimous jury. And Oracle is not entitled to share in Android's profits. Writing in Ars Technica, Joe Mullen, who we spoke to earlier this week, says that after 3 days of deliberation, a unanimous jury has found that Google's Android operating system does not infringe Oracle-owned copyrights. So a victory for fair use, but I mean, it's interesting. One thing Joe said, that the damage might already been done for independent developers. What do you think about this, Lauren?
This is actually really interesting. I felt like this trial had a lot more writing on it than a lot of people really saw at face value. People look at two tech titans fighting, especially Oracle versus Google, and they think, oh man, this is just, you know, they're tying each other up in court to compete with each other or to do whatnot. But, you know, the idea was that Oracle really wanted to claim a portion of the 80% of the Android, the supporting structure for Android is Java-based. And I thought it was really interesting the way that they sort of examined the court case and examined the evidence at hand. I had read that the judge actually learned elements of Java in order to figure out whether or not it did constitute an original thought or idea as protected by the U.S. In copyright and trademark, and I thought in patenting, and I thought that that was really interesting. Personally, I think that it is a huge win. First of all, I think that a lot of people will agree about that, because I think that when it comes to software intellectual property, there's a lot of predators out there. There's a lot of patent trolls. There are a lot of people who are trying to capitalize on really vague patents, like, for example, method to store a digital image. Has driven a lot of startups out of business through lawsuits, again, suing businesses until they die in a way that is predatory. And I think that what this really says is that, you know, we should re-examine exactly what the core tenets of software patenting is. It's certainly not going to bring back several companies from the dead who have basically died at the hands of patent trolls or other, you know, IP snafus. But I think that it's a good first step in understanding how difficult it has been to really understand who owns software and what does it mean, and, you know, when can somebody lay a claim to something and when they can't. All of those things, I think, you know, we're starting the conversation now, and I think that it's going to move in a direction that will hopefully benefit software programmers in the long run.
Yeah, and like, tagging on to what you were saying as far as like the damage already being done, man, there's a fierce game of ping pong going on in the background. By the way.
Sorry.
I wish I was in on that because I miss my ping pong
It's
days.
really intense.
I understand. It could be beer pong. It sounds like it might be of the level of beer pong.
Olympic level beer pong.
It's Oracle and Google fighting it out at the ping pong table. Actually,
they're duking it out. This is what it's going to look like in the future in the Court of Appeals, the ping pong Court of Appeals. But I mean, the damage being done is essentially that APIs are copyrightable. That's already been decided at this point. So this one case is kind of an example of what we will probably see repeatedly, because now companies, when posed with this kind of dilemma, have to go to court to prove that it is either fair use or not. But it's a huge win for fair use in this particular case. So at least from a precedent standpoint, hopefully that that helps others in the same place. And you got to give the jury credit. They, I mean, I would say by and large, everything that I've read and my own personal feelings about this included, they made the right decision. But man, they had to understand a lot in a very short amount of time. This is not an easy case to really understand the nuance of, and they really only had 2 weeks to do it. So I don't know if the result of the case is from them truly understanding all the nitty gritty and making a solid choice from there, or it just being a confusing mess and yay, we lucked into it being right. But I'm happy it was chosen the way that it was. A new partnership between Microsoft and Facebook will see 4,100 miles of internet cable laid across the Atlantic Ocean with bandwidth of 160 terabits per second, blazing fast, to say the least. This will be the highest capacity cable to date, stretching from northern Virginia to Bilbao. Is it Bilbao, Spain? Construction is set to start in August with an end date of October 2017. And the development of the Maria cable, as it's been named, is to, quote, meet the growing customer demand for high-speed, reliable connections for cloud and online services for Microsoft, Facebook, and their customers. So basically, they're building it for themselves, but then they're going to allow third parties to tag on onto that on any unused bandwidth. So let's just hope no anchors are dropped on them, severing the cable across the Atlantic Ocean.
Well, they say that's part of it, that these are more geographically diverse.
Yeah.
They're not all in one
Right.
place. So if something horrible happens, then, we'll still have our Facebook.
Oh, please. And our Microsoft Cloud accounts.
Yeah, this is definitely a situation where it's like, I'll scratch your back if you scratch
Yes,
mine, because
totally.
of course Microsoft is getting a huge win in building its cloud, and Facebook is getting a huge win because it's the internet in some parts of the world still.
That's true.
Yeah, it's $15 billion. So, yeah. All right. Well, earlier this week, we talked about the rumors that Apple would open up the Siri SDK and create an Amazon Echo-like assistant. Sources tell VentureBeat's Jordan Novett that the new device will be part of a revamped Apple TV. A source tells him that the Apple TV will eventually come with its own mic and speaker, and that Apple has been considering using the Apple TV this way since 2012. This is very interesting. I have a new Apple TV, but I have a feeling that I'll have to buy another Apple TV in order for it to work as an Amazon Echo-like device. Lauren, do you have an Echo?
No, I don't. I'm a little bit scared of Alexa.
Are you scared of Siri, the Alexa killer? Maybe someday.
A little bit. Sometimes I get concerned Siri listens to me too closely.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is interesting. I think that I'm not surprised that Apple will have a device like this. We talked a little bit about it, and it makes sense that it would be in the Apple TV. Right now, I think the Apple TV is $150, which is a little less than what the Echo will be. The Google Home, we still don't know how much that is going to cost, but it seems like everybody has to have one of these devices.
So
every company has to. Everyone doesn't have to have one in their own house.
It seems like it seems like all the companies feel like everyone has to have one in their house. So then this is just about kind of bolstering the Apple TV and not about kind of the wider implications of bringing AI into the home. I have to imagine this is a piece. Like I can't imagine that like the future of this new thing rides on Apple TV going on. Like you don't put an Apple TV in the kitchen unless you have a TV there, I guess. Then you do. But
Well, the living room.
But I guess maybe it's
the
different approach.
Yeah, I know. I mean, that's what I was thinking. Like our TV is, shoved in the room, like the office room away from, it's not in our living room on purpose. So this would be a different way of doing it. But yeah, the idea, that was what Google's Home was pushing too. Like you can control your Chromecast with it. So it would make sense. And I do have the Siri remote for the Apple TV, and it is smarter than Siri on my other devices. It's more, it can understand language in a better way. I can ask longer things like what are, this Modern Family episode that had, Brad Pitt in it or something like that, like longer, and it actually gives me the right answer.
Wait a minute, Brad Pitt was in Modern Family?
I made that up. I don't know.
Okay. I've been following Brad Pitt lately, so I just honestly don't know. It's possible.
I will ask Siri.
We should ask Siri, actually. Siri would probably know. Obviously, updates for Android devices. This is just a big problem, and it continues to be a big problem. And Google must know what a priority it is to tighten update releases. But that's a huge challenge. Android's approach all along has been about customization, and the operating system was built with that kind of variability in mind. So even little changes require a lot of work to roll out to end users. Well, a Bloomberg report says that Google is considering the release of an ongoing list of updated rankings of the top phone makers producing Android devices. It's already created this list, supposedly, internally, and is considering making it public to apply public pressure. Do we think that this sort of pressure could make any sort of, impactful change? What do you think, Lauren?
This is really interesting to me because I felt like for so long, Google was really proud of the flexibility of Android and sort of the way that different levels of phones could really tap into rich systems, even if they were not the most current one. But clearly, they've decided that it's really more important that they sort of curb fragmentation. And so as a result, if they have to crack the whip, they have to crack the whip. They're responsible for having third-party hardware manufacturers, and so they obviously have to be update police as well.
Well, after the break, we will talk about all the social media news that's fit not to print with Kurt Wagner from Recode. But first, let's take a minute to thank ZipRecruiter, the sponsor of this episode. Are you hiring? Do you know where to post your job to find the best candidates fast? Posting jobs in one place isn't enough to find quality candidates. If you want to find the perfect hire, you need to post your job on all the top job sites. And with ZipRecruiter, now you can. With ZipRecruiter.com, you can post to more than 100 job boards, including social media networks like Facebook, Twitter, and Google+, all with a single click. Just post once and watch your candidates roll into ZipRecruiter's easy-to-use interface. You can search by skills, location, work experience, and more. ZipRecruiter's advanced matching technology delivers the most relevant candidates based on your criteria. ZipRecruiter offers optimized pages that look great on any screen. Add their unique mobile apply process for more visitors and applicants. Find candidates in any city or industry nationwide. No more juggling emails or calls to your office. You can add multiple users to your account. Find out today why ZipRecruiter has been used by over 800,000 businesses and is trusted by hundreds of Fortune 500 companies. Whether you're hiring now or plan to hire in the near future, check out their blog for recruiting tips and hiring resources. Right now, you can try ZipRecruiter for free by going to ZipRecruiter.com/TNT. Access millions of resumes on ZipRecruiter with thousands of new ones added daily. ZipRecruiter is the fastest way to hire great people. Go to ZipRecruiter.com/TNT, and we thank ZipRecruiter for their support of Tech News Today. Joining us to talk about Snapchat and some Twitter news is Kurt Wagner from Recode. Welcome back, Kurt.
Hey, Megan. How you doing?
I'm good. Did you have a good vacation?
I had a great vacation. I was in Peru. Hard to have a bad time down in Peru.
So I hear. So why are investors throwing money at Snapchat? Is it the selfie filters?
Actually, believe it or not, it might be partly because of the selfie filters. I think that we've seen a lot come out about Snapchat recently. I think today it was TechCrunch that got their hands on a pitch deck that Snapchat was bringing around to investors that showed that their business was growing pretty substantially. We had reported that earlier, that this year they were aiming for between 300 and 350 million in revenue, which was about 6 or 7 times what they did in 2015, so a pretty substantial jump. And what the pitch deck showed was that they plan to be between $500 and $1 billion in revenue next year. So the business is growing. They have a lot of young users. They have selfie filters and other things that young people want to mess around with. And so I think that combination makes it very attractive to people who are looking for a place to put their money.
How about you, Lauren? What do you think is Snapchat's magic?
Well, the teens, clearly. I think that anybody would say if they have even remotely been familiar with Snapchat is that they're capitalizing on the fact that they have young blood using their system and that they're trendy and people love them. And I mean, I think that Snapchat has done a really great job marketing to teenagers and to bring influencers on the platform. The only thing I'm really interested in is how they're going to get to that 59 million number to that billion number.
Right, that's a big jump.
Especially when it seems like really the only place where they're making a lot of money is filters.
Yeah, what do you think about that, Kurt? I mean, I think also about the teens, because I think teens have a different outlook on advertising. I mean, the filters are clearly branded. I mean, and the teenagers that I know don't care. They don't care if they can make their face into a taco. They don't care that it says Taco Bell on it. What do you think about that?
I think that's true. I think we're also overlooking actually the two biggest parts of their business are live stories and Snapchat Discover. So let's talk Discover real quick. They have a section of the app with, I believe, like 20 publishers right now, ESPN and CNN and Vice and others, who are creating content for Snapchat every single day, brand new content that disappears after 24 hours, and they're selling ads alongside that content. And so that's a pretty, I believe, healthy revenue stream at the moment. But I think more importantly for them is they're making a bunch of money around what are essentially live events. They're called live stories. And so, for example, for the Super Bowl, they'll take a collection of videos and photos that their users take and submit to the app. They'll compile this into a big collage of, Super Bowl related snaps, if you will, and then they'll sell ad space to Budweiser alongside it. And that ad space is not cheap. And so I think you can imagine they're doing that for the Oscars and Super Bowl and Coachella and all these different events, and especially events where young people are hanging out. And so they're making money in a lot of ways besides just these fun filters. And I don't know if they're actually going to get to $1 billion next year, but the fact that they think they might, I think, gives a lot of people who, again, are investing in them a lot of confidence.
Would you say that Snapchat is kind of following a similar trajectory as Facebook in its kind of early days as it began to really kind of take off? I get the same feeling out of Snapchat as I did, then with Facebook right now.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Snapchat's business model aligns much more with like the entertainment industry and television than it necessarily does with maybe what we've seen from a Facebook or Twitter. And what I mean by that is, Facebook really, I guess they were putting like banner ads in Facebook and things, but like Facebook and Twitter have built a huge business off of a promoted post, right? So you post something on Twitter, you want to amplify that to more people, so you pay to kind of push that tweet out. And same thing with Facebook, same thing with Pinterest. Snapchat doesn't really have that right now. They're essentially going this old school media and entertainment route where they're saying, hey, movie studios, you have a trailer for a new video that you want to show. We have an audience that wants to watch cool videos. Like, let's just marry those two things together. They're not really, taking a promoted Snap kind of approach. So I think there are some differences, but I think the feeling generally of like, hey, let's kind of like this slow ramp up of the business, I'm sure there are a lot of similarities between what Snapchat's doing now and what a Facebook or a Twitter or someone else did, at the same stage in their life cycle.
Mm-hmm.
How much do you think the difference is that Snapchat's in LA versus Silicon Valley?
I think it's huge. I think their CEO, Evan Spiegel, just loves A, to be different than Silicon Valley, and B, he grew up in the LA area. I think he views himself as a designer and as an artist and as someone who can kind of relate much more with the entertainment industry than he probably can with the stuffy suits of, Madison Avenue, who are maybe doing marketing and advertising in that way. And so I think that that has a lot to do with the company's identity. And as a result, I think, there's no surprise. It's not a coincidence, I should say, that I think the very first advertiser from Snapchat, which was now about 1.5 years ago, was one of the big movie studios, and those are the partners that they continue to work with, and the NFL and people who have great content and great entertainment to share. Those are the people they want to work with.
And so a lot of people criticize Twitter for being confusing to the average people. I find that Snapchat is sort of confusing. Is that a general complaint, or is it really just that the people they want do not find it confusing?
I think that's valid. I think that's really valid. I'm not really sure if the Snapchat product translates super cleanly to a demographic outside of, high school, college, maybe fresh out of college. I don't necessarily want to say that's by design, but I kind of do believe it's by design a little bit. I think there's this feeling of, again, all of this stems from CEO Evan Spiegel, but I think there's a feeling from him that's kind of like, if you can't figure out how to use the product, then go ahead and move along. I'm not going to sit here and kind of hold your hand through how to use Snapchat. I think that it's important that they do take that approach, and I think eventually, as they start to saturate the young teens and the young people who are on the product, and they say, okay, now we need to move to an older demographic to keep our user base growing. It'll probably be more important for them to kind of like simplify things and maybe even teach people how to use it. But at this point, it doesn't feel like a top priority for sure.
So yesterday we talked about a BuzzFeed report that Twitter was disbanding its commerce team. And now you have a report today of some CEOs leaving. What do the two have to do with each other?
Yeah, so a couple top executives from Twitter are going to leave. One is Nathan Hubbard, who was kind of brought on from Ticketmaster to run the Twitter commerce efforts a few years back. The other is Jana Messerschmidt, who's been at Twitter for quite a while now, and she was running their biz dev, business development stuff, and that includes all of their kind of outside relationships with other companies, like the Google relationship. That was a big thing that she worked on and her team worked on. I think the significance, I mean, first of all, besides the fact that it's, here Twitter is losing a couple more key players, which is something that we've kind of seen over and over again over the last couple of years. But I think when you look at the commerce stuff, I'm a little hesitant to say that Nathan's departure today is directly correlated to that story that we read in BuzzFeed yesterday, because, as we said in our story, the commerce team was actually kind of disbanded back in October when Twitter had some company-wide layoffs, did a bunch of reorging, and Nathan started doing other responsibilities. So the commerce thing has been kind of on the back burner, if not even further back, for some time now. I think the coincidence is such that he's kind of leaving at just the right time where this news came out, but really that's been an issue for them for quite a while. I don't know what they're going to do with commerce. I mean, they pretty much said they want to do like direct response type ads and customer service stuff. So if I complain to United Airlines that my flight is delayed again, they could probably send me a tweet or a message that may have some kind of button in it that I could use to buy a different flight or something like that. I'm totally speculating here, but that's the vibe that I get, that they want to go with commerce versus something more traditional like a buy button that shows up in your feed.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think a lot of people will argue that Twitter seems to be sort of flailing around a little bit, struggling a little bit. So I'm going to ask both of you this question. I'm going to start with you, Kurt. How do you think Snapchat can prevent becoming the next Twitter in a negative way?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think when we look at the issues that Twitter deals with now, one, they've kind of failed to show people why they should be using the app and how to be using the app, right? So I think one of the biggest misperceptions about Twitter is when I go to someone who doesn't use it and I say, hey, why aren't you on Twitter? They say, well, I don't have anything to say, or, I don't care what other people are having for breakfast or for lunch or whatever. And there's this, a lack of understanding that Twitter has evolved a lot from where it first started, which was just for a place to kind of share updates about your life. And so I think when you look at someone like Snapchat, I think, maybe they benefit from the fact that there's not like one specific way that people are supposed to use the app. But I think going back to what you said, we're going to have to see Snapchat probably make more of an effort to teach people about Snapchat, why they should be using it, why it makes sense, and why it's worth their time, because that's something Twitter never really did a very good job of, and they're certainly suffering because of it right now.
What do you think, Lauren?
Oh, I fully agree. I think that, Snapchat has done a really great job in sort of capturing the 18 to 24 and below demographic. I think that there has been a lot of talk about how Snapchat is really connected with the young audience, and that's really great. And I think that, it's going to have that cachet because everybody wants to go where the teens go. But the problem, I think, is that Snapchat is going to have to get over that hurdle of figuring out exactly what kind of use it provides, a 35-year-old housewife in the middle of Minnesota. What about Snapchat is going to be unique for a senior citizen versus, you know, your average teen. I think that the way that Facebook was able to sort of grow out of itself was that it continued to find new uses for its product, you know? So it wasn't just, you know, connecting with your college friends. It was, oh, now grandma can stay connected to you and see pictures. And, you know, that's really easy, and communication is just easier. And even now they're like, you know, Facebook is now a global thing, and they're really pushing that. I think Snapchat needs to find that angle and that avenue, and risk and avoid that risk of being, you know, kind of crammed into that box that Twitter is, where it's like it's only for certain people.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Kurt, thank you so much for joining us. Kurt is a reporter at Recode. He's at Kurt Wagner 8 on Twitter, and you can follow all his work. Is there anything else that you have reported on that we need to know about?
I don't think so. We got our big code conference next week, so we're all going to be down in sunny Southern California, and I would just encourage people to stay tuned because we have some really cool people on stage. I think I'm excited to see Elon Musk talk to Kara on stage. That should be a lot of fun. So,
all right, thanks so much, Kurt.
Thank you, Kurt.
All right, thanks for having me. Bye.
Talk to you soon.
Bye, Kurt.
All right, feedback time. TNT at twit.tv is where you can send your comments. Benjamin Roche writes, I would like to see you cover the release of this mobile game that will become extremely viral this year. Niantic is partnering with Nintendo using technologies it has refined in the game of Ingress to get Pokemon gaming into the hands of millions. So we've talked about Pokemon Go on All About Android a number of times, and on that show, I am like the only person that is like completely clueless in the world of Pokemon. It missed me entirely, but I realize people are super passionate about it. So Lauren, I ask you this: Are you into Pokemon? Or is this something that's exciting to you?
I have been known to have the desire to be the best, like no one ever was. And I have traveled across the land searching far and wide for Pokemon.
You're getting thumbs up from
right.
from
I think
Greg,
you're saying something that
Yes.
you have to Google.
I know, right?
Yeah, I am. I'm like a medium experienced Poke trainer.
Okay.
So I'm really excited actually for Pokemon Go. Actually, I had a friend of mine text me today that he was in the closed beta, and I'd already asked him how many Pokemon he had caught, and it turns out that he had caught 60 of them, but about half of them were the rat Pokemon, and he was kind of upset about it. Which is kind of the beauty of this Pokemon Go, which is that you sort of take the core function of Pokemon, which is to use your little avatar and wander around and then catch cool-looking monster animals and then have them become your friends and fight for you, but do that in real life, which is just what every person who plays Pokemon has ever dreamed about. Yes. And using augmented reality and using all of the location-based technology that Niantic has really perfected is going to make this quite a hoot. Yeah,
it's interesting. So Pokemon Go will vibrate your phone when you happen to be near one of the 100 Pokemon that are around when you're out in the world, just walking around, basically. So you can throw a Pokeball at it. See, I feel like I'm like speaking a language I don't actually know how to speak. Captured
Snapchat and Pokemon. God, we might be old.
Oh, we're old here. Captured Pokemon eggs will hatch after you walk a certain distance. So there's a little bit of that kind of like tracking your distance in order for that to happen. Niantic will release a Pokemon Go Plus, and I did put a link in the show notes if you want to show this. It's it's like a Bluetooth wrist strap. So you can wear this on your wrist and keep your phone in your pocket, and you just walk around and wait for it to vibrate and then hit the button to throw the ball and capture them, I guess.
So that video, Lauren, do you think that video, I think we might have, you and I might have talked about this last year. Like that video, do you think that's realistic?
So this is actually the really interesting part, which is that Pokemon is such a treasured property, especially for people, particularly of my generation. I think that people have always really envisioned this. Like when you play Pokemon as a little kid, this is what you want, is like to wander around and to find your favorite Pokemon and to catch them and to make them your own. Like that's like the dream. That's really the dream. And I think that what a lot of people I've heard who are huge fans of Pokemon have been concerned about is that that expectation isn't going to meet the reality of what is actually going to be in front of them. And I think that that's really the important part, is that by taking a really sentimental property that a lot of people really care about and sort of adding this new augmented reality structure around it, people are going to have really, really high hopes that this is going to be everything that they dreamed about when they were a kid. So Niantic will commit no small feat if it's able to sort of make a successful version of this game that people really identify with and want to keep coming back to beyond it being a novelty. And I think that that's something that, it managed to do for a small subset of people with Ingress. But I think that, having the Pokemon name attached to it means that there is a huge burden to perform here, especially because Nintendo's releasing the latest Pokemon at the end of this year, and people are already insane about that. So it's, still such a huge property. And again, it's a really sentimental property for a lot of people. So there's a lot to live up to.
Yeah, especially when you consider that it's all the action is happening on your small smartphone, screen. So it's got camera pass through to kind of let the real world kind of pass through, and then, superimposes the action on top of that. So there's a little bit of that look through the looking glass sort of thing. But it almost seems like in order for it to really live up to kind of like the promotional video, like it's not going to look like that. That almost looks like augmented reality goggles walking around. And I bet you at some point we will probably see that, and it'll just be normal to walk down the street and see someone with their, I don't know, their VR goggles on, walking down the street searching for Pokemon. That won't be weird at all.
No.
No.
I knew you'd be the perfect person to talk about it, by the way.
It's, as I said, in her wheelhouse.
Yes.
Yeah. She was like, oh, do you know anything about Pokemon? I was like, the better question should be, did you already pick the starter for the next game? Because the answer is, in fact, yes, I'm going to be going with the leaf type owl with a bow tie. You're welcome. Already ready. Already there.
Well, TNT's fan of the day is more kitsch from my childhood. Paul Gunton, he is at Sailor Lion on Twitter. He says, I love watching Tech News Today on my Chromebook with my Star Wars lunchbox.
Yeah.
I asked yesterday for people to show us their lunchboxes because for no other reason than we talked about the next Xbox might be the size of a lunchbox. And I like old lunchboxes.
It works. Hey, it worked. I mean, seriously, Paul, you came through. So thank you. So
show us how you watch or listen to TNT, record a video or take a picture of yourself or your setup and post it on Instagram, Google+, Twitter, Facebook. Use the hashtag HowIWatchTNT and we are going to find it. Lauren, did you have a Pokemon lunchbox?
That's a good question.
No, I didn't have a Pokemon lunchbox, but I remember very smugly bringing my Game Boy Pocket to school when I had Pokemon Red, and trading with kids on the playground and being like the baller because I had it. I had the connector cable and everything. And a binder full of my binder full of Pokemon cards with like a giant holographic Blastoise sticker on the front. Meanwhile, I'm like 3'5". I'm like a tiny child. And I'm like, this is my life.
Seriously, and you are not alone.
And you'd make a career out of that love.
They made a career out of it.
That's great. I love it. All right, well, I am not much of a motorcycle rider, and by much, I actually mean I'm not at all. But if I were a motorcyclist, I'd opt for something a little different. Perhaps this 3D printed all-electric motorcycle developed by Airbus. It's called the Light Rider. I love the name. Looks maybe a bit more like an electric bike than a motorcycle. It's a little kind of smaller. I don't know. It just looks a little different, obviously. It's a feast for the eyes once we see it here on the video. It's made out of AppWorks proprietary printing material. It's called Scow Mallow, and it weighs only 77 pounds. It's got a hollow frame design, 6 kilowatt battery. That's good for 37 miles on a single charge and a top speed of 50 miles per hour. So, you're not necessarily balling on this, but it's a signature in and of itself. So maybe you are from that perspective.
I don't know. If you had this, it wouldn't matter if you didn't know how to use Snapchat or you never played Pokemon.
Now, it'd
still be cool.
If you could hunt Pokemon while riding this, I think that's the collision of all worlds that are great. Yeah, it's nice looking. Yeah, see, it kind of looks like a big mountain bike, but an electric mountain bike to me. I don't know. I like it.
I want to really see it scale a San Francisco hill, and then I can tell if it's legit.
That's true. That's true. I don't think, I don't know. I wonder how powerful it actually is for those hills. Some of those are mighty.
Exactly. That's like the key things. Like, you're not going to commute with something that's, if you want to get an electric bike, that's really great. But, people really invest in motorcycles and scooters, especially in the San Francisco area, but in a lot of places, because commuting is either a little bit cumbersome with a car, or, it's just more perfect for a city. But in a wasteland that's hilly and crazy like San Francisco, you really want to make sure that you've got something with a little bit more power to it.
Yeah, you end up having to go all sorts of strange, routes just to avoid all those hills if you can on something like that.
Exactly.
Not everybody's going to get this. It's actually a limited production run of 50 for sale, and it's only around $56,000. No big deal. I thought 3D printed things would be cheap, but I guess I was wrong.
Mm-hmm. Nope. No, not this one. Well, Lauren, you are already on episode 20 of your Nothing Matters podcast. Tell us about it.
Sure. Nothing Matters is a podcast hosted by me and my dear friend, Ben Timmons, and we talk about tech, media, pop culture, politics, basically everything. Our kicker is Nothing Matters, where we give you everything that the garbage that happens on Twitter. We pick through the garbage so you don't have to.
Oh, okay.
Is really our key takeaway here. So we talk about, we're talking everything, We just recently put a moratorium. However, I'm unfortunate to say that we will no longer be talking about the election or the Kardashians for the next 6 months. So I'm sorry to inform you if you're interested in either of those topics, but everything else, fair game.
I avoid both, actually, so that's good news
great.
for me.
So this will be perfect for you. This is great. And if you want to know what the cool hip teens are into, definitely listen.
Excellent.
I do need to know that. I just recently learned that the term throwing shade has dated back to the late 80s. I don't know if you knew that, but yeah.
In fact, it is. The original definition actually comes from a great documentary called Paris is Burning, which I think might still be available on Netflix and is totally worth watching.
And also the term read, like to read someone, like throwing shade. That's the kind of stuff that you would learn on your podcast. Excellent.
Yes.
You can get it at SoundCloud. Anywhere else, or is that the best place to get it?
We're on SoundCloud, but actually we're available also on iTunes and Google Play. If you have a podcasting app like Overcast, we're also available there. So basically whatever podcast apps of your choice, you just look up Nothing Matters and you see a little graphic interpretation of me warming my hands by a garbage fire. You know you're in the right place.
Excellent. Just look for the garbage fire.
Look for the garbage fire. There you have it.
Lauren, it's always a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Lauren. Have a great night. We'll see you soon. Tomorrow's awesome guest will be Adam Christensen from the MacCast podcast. We'll hope for a little spicy Mac news to throw into the mix. I'm sure we'll get something. TNT records live every Monday through Friday at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, 12 a.m. UTC at twit.tv/live. You can be a part of the show by emailing us at tnt@twit.tv. You can also leave us a short voicemail, 260-TNT-SHOW. You can find the show on Twitter. We're at Tech News Today TV.
Subscribe so you are the first to get the show. You can find all the ways to subscribe at twit.tv/TNT. And if you subscribe to iTunes or Google Play and you can leave a review, leave us a review. It helps people find us. And I am on Twitter. I'm at Megan Morrone.
I'm at Jason Howell on Twitter. Thanks to our technical director, Kara Cole, and Greg, of course, and all the folks who help us produce this show every single day. And thanks to you for talking tech with us. We'll see you all tomorrow. Bye, everyone. Oh.